Life at Bethel, the good, the bad, and yes, the ugly. One of the most interesting concepts that they often tell Jehovah's Witnesses around the world is that those who are at Bethel, they are sacrificing. And the reason they're sacrificing is because they're learned to be content with Jehovah's provisions. Wow, you got to be at Bethel to see this. Really a different thing. In fact, I remember my first year, I saw something I did not expect to see. I saw some of the most materialistic people you can imagine. People who were not satisfied with Jehovah's provision. They wanted more. They wanted something better. What am I talking about? Well, it was known as room bids. And what is room bids? Well, at Bethel, people come and go. So rooms become open. So typically once a year, they would post all the available rooms of people who had left, and you could bid on them. You could bid on them on the number of years you had in full-time service. So if you had a number of years, like 10, 15, 20 years in full-time service, then somebody who just had 2 years, you knock them off from that room. They wouldn't be able to even stand a chance with this new empty room that came available. I remember coming down to breakfast that Saturday morning for room bid. And I saw all of these sisters who had like little clipboards. I'm like, because I had never been to a room bid, didn't know what it was going to be about. And as soon as the morning prayer was over, amen, people scattered like ants running all over the building because you're trying to go through all the rooms. You want to see every room on the list. You have a list of all the rooms. You check people, check them off. And I mean, people were coming in with tape measures. People were coming in with cameras, taking pictures of the size of the room. This room, this way, this overlooks New York City. Oh, this was looking at a building. And I'm thinking, me and my roommate was like, well, we should just be content with Jehovah's provision. No. Not at Bethel. The room bidding gets vicious because what happens is sometimes it boils down even to people's date of baptism. You may have two people. They've both been in full-time service, started pioneering 10 years ago. So how do you split the room? Well, the question is asked, well, who got baptized? Who started serving Jehovah first? And this is how it's done. And so you would often see people who would look at other people's rooms and just shake their heads like, what? And there were some spectacular rooms, 20, 30, 40 years, 50 years in full-time service could get you a very nice room overlooking New York City. But what's interesting was I found out that something happened a few years before I got to Bethel that involved a lot of the traveling overseers. You see, at one time, it was based entirely on your years of service at Bethel. So you would have a guy with 12 years at Bethel, 10 years at Bethel, 5 years at Bethel. And you would have a district overseer or a circuit overseer who would be calling off the road, come into Bethel, and he only got 8 months of Bethel service. And these guys, their jaws got locked. Like, what you mean? I was out on the road 32 years. And so eventually, what did they do? There was so much complaint from the traveling overseers, they changed the rules. They said, okay, we're going to factor in your travel work as part of the full-time service total. But what you're looking at are people who really are not content with their provisions. The little room they were given, they wanted more. And yet these same guys will go out and give talks every weekend, telling the rank and file Jehovah's Witness, are you content with what you have? Are you trying to get a bigger house, a better car? And I'm thinking this is kind of hypocritical, but that's what life is like at Bethel. You get a chance to see the good, the bad, and yes, the ugly. Now, all of this took place before they have this new arrangement now where they give Bethelites a decent sized room. When I was there were buildings where there was no bathroom in each individual room. I lived in what was called the 107 building, the one that had the nice little garden out front. It was basically a dormitory. And so you had the bathroom down the hall. So you would have 10, 15, 20 shower heads down the hall. And that's where you had to go. Now, this was very difficult for couples because that meant your wife, if she needed to go to the restroom at night, she had to walk all the way down the hall to the ladies' room. And I remember so vividly, sometimes, you and the guys, y'all be coming in late at night. You've been out to some little get together up in the Bronx, out in Queens. And you come in, you get off the elevator, and there's Sister Davis walking down the hall. Oh, she got her little robe, and she's like, ooh, and how you doing, sister? And you just keep on walking. So for many people, being able to get a room with a bathroom, that was considered gold. It's amazing how some of the most basic things in people's lives become valuable things for those at Bethel. For guys who want to stay at Bethel, they would get married. And it was interesting how one of the things that you really wanted when you were looking for a wife was that she was already in full-time service, because that would increase your chances of being accepted at Bethel. But also, if a sister had more seniority than you did. And I know a number of guys, their wives actually had more seniority than they did. Reason why is because, they started pioneering when they were 16 years old. So by the time they rolled into Bethel, they already at 19 years of age. This sister already got 3 years behind her. And so you could use your wife. You couldn't combine your years of full-time service as a couple, but you could always use whoever had the highest time. And if it was your wife, that's whose name you put down on the piece of paper, and then you would bid for it, and hopefully you would get that room. So for many guys, they would marry sisters who would have more seniority than they did. Reason why? Because a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses, they would quit school at 16. And many of these sisters, they would start pioneering right at 16. So by the time they qualified to come to Bethel at 19 or getting married at 23, 24, 25, they would already have 6, 7 years of full-time service. Lady C had a couple of roommates. When they came to Bethel, they literally had more seniority than their husbands. Of course, the catch-22 is you got to make sure that you write down the right room, that you check off the room that you actually want. And the reason why is because there will always be somebody who would come up at the end of room bid, turn in their paperwork, and they would find out they put down the wrong room. And I remember this especially for couples. For single guys, you just, well, man, we got to go to a little small room now. But to see couples have these huge rooms and they inadvertently wrote down the wrong room number, and this is the room they got, a small cracker box. I know couples who literally had to put their furniture and some of the items that they had in their Bethel room into storage because the little room that they were going into was typically a little room that a single guy would have. And they had to move there as a couple, lost their bathroom. It was bad. You talking about marital problems? You talking about marital discord? Man, that was marital discord. But that, once again, is life at Bethel. The good, the bad, and yes, the ugly. So all of this effort that's put forth to present that Jehovah's people should be content and satisfied with whatever provisions they have, get to Bethel and get behind the scenes. And you'll see that Bethelites, those guys are just as materialistic as anybody else. But yet they'll stand on platforms all around the world and tell you shouldn't desire anything better than what you have. This has been JT.
This program was sponsored by Critical Thinkers.